Muhammad Yaqub Bek, Tajiki, 1820–30 May 1877, was a Tajik adventurer who was master of the Tarim Basin from 1865 to 1877. He held the title of Atalik Ghazi, champion father. Spelling variants. In English-language literature, the name of Yaqub Beg has also been spelt as Yaqub Beg. Encyclopedia Britannica. Yaqub Beg, Bolger, 1878, or Yaqub Beg, Kim Ho-dong, 2004. Authors using Russian sources have also used the spelling Yaqub Bek. Payne, 1996. A few publications in English written by Chinese authors spell his name Yaqub, which is the Pinyin transcription of the Chinese transcription of his name. Chinese Pinyin, Yaqub-paxia. The first name, Muhammad, is subject to the usual variations in spelling as well. Yaqub. Arabic name, Beg, is a Turkish noble title. Biography. Early life. Yaqub Beg was born in the town of Skente, in the Khanate of Kokand, now in Uzbekistan. He rose rapidly through the ranks in the service of the Khanate of Kokand. By the year 1847 he was commander of the fort at Akmeshe until its capture by the Russians in 1853. He seems to have left the fort before its fall. Later that year he led an unsuccessful attempt to retake it. He was involved in the complex factional shifts of the Khanate of Kokand. In 1864 he helped defend Tashkent during the first Russian attack. Establishment. 1865. As a result of the Dungan Revolt. 1862–77. By 1864 the Chinese held only the citadels of Kashgar and a few other places. The Kyrgyz Kazakh Sadich Beg entered Kashgar, was unable to take the citadel and sent to Tashkent for a Konya to become ruler. Berzug Khan, the only surviving son of Jahangir Konya, left Tashkent with 6 men. Was joined by Yaqub Beg. Left Kokand with 68 men. Crossed the frontier in January 1865. Gained more supporters, was soon installed on the throne of his ancestors. Sadich Beg revolted, was defeated by Yaqub Beg and driven beyond the mountains. Yaqub went southeast to Yarkand, the largest town in the region, and was driven out by an army from Kucha. He next besieged the Chinese at Yangi Hisar for 40 days and massacred the garrison. Sadich Beg reappeared, was defeated and talked into becoming an ally. Invaders from Badakhshan were also talked into alliance. A Dungan force from Kucha and eastward arrived at Maralbeshi, was defeated and 1,000 of the Dungans joined Yaqub Beg. Yarkand now decided to submit to Berzug Khan and his great vizier. The Chinese in the Kashgar citadel now had no hope. In September 1865 the second-in-command and 3,000 men surrendered, converted to Islam and joined Yaqub Beg. The actual commander refused and blew himself up along with his family. The commanders of Yarkand and Kulja had done the same. An army of rebels from Kokand arrived and joined Yaqub. Late in the year Berzug Khan and Yaqub went to Yarkand to deal with the disturbance. The Dungan faction suborned Yaqub's Dungans and he was reduced to a few hundred men. Berzug drew off to a separate camp. Yaqub defeated the Dungans. Berzug Khan fled to Kashgar and declared Yaqub a traitor. The religious leader supported Yaqub and Berzug was seized in his palace. He was confined for 18 months. Was exiled to Tibet and later found his way to Kokand. In a little more than a year Yaqub had become master of Kashgar, Yarkand and Maralbashi, roughly the western end of the Tarim Basin as far as the Yarkand River. Expansion eastward. 1866–67. Around 1866 he moved southeast from Yarkand and took Khortan by treachery and some slaughter. Beyond Khortan the south side of the Tarim Basin does not seem to have been militarily significant. In the spring or summer of 1867 he moved northeast and took Aksuizli and Kutcha with some difficulty. Returning to Kashgar he took Uturfan. Before leaving Kutcha he received the submission of Kara Shah, Turfan, Hami and Ürümqi. Thus by his third year, 1867, he had nominal control of the whole Tarim Basin and some power to the northeast at Ürümqi. To the west, at about this time, Russia annexed Tashkent and Samarkand. More wars. In 1869 he annexed Sirakal, possibly Tashkorgan, on the road to India. At this point documentation becomes poor. In 1869 he began a series of wars eastward, taking Korla and other places. Turfan was taken in July 1870. There was a Battle of Ürümqi. 1870. He fought with Hami and Ürümqi but did not annex them. Downfall. 1877. The Chinese began the reconquest in 1876. Yaqub died in 1877 while retreating from the Chinese, seeking reconquest of Xinjiang. Opinions. Bolger praised Chinese rule, seeing them, like the British in India, as foreign conquerors who brought peace and order. He admired Yaqub as a soldier and politician, but thought that his position was ultimately hopeless. Poems were written about the victories of Yaqub Beg's forces over the Chinese and the Dungans, Chinese Muslims. Yaqub Beg was given the title of Atalik Ghazi, champion father of the faithful, by the Emir of Bukhara in 1866. The Ottoman Sultan gave him the title of Emir. Yaqub entered into relations and signed treaties with the Russian Empire and Great Britain, but when he tried to get their support against China, he failed. Yaqub Beg was disliked by his Turkic Muslim subjects, burdening them with heavy taxes and subjecting them to a harsh version of Islamic Sharia law. The Tarim Basin was conquered by him acting as a Kokadi foreigner and not as a local separatist, Uyghur, which he was not at all. It was written by Zhao Zongtang that the Andijanis are tyrannical to their people. Government troops should comfort them with benevolence. The Andijanis are greedy in extorting from the people. Government troops should rectify this by being generous. Quote, Yaqub Beg's rule was unpopular among the natives, with one of the local Kashgaris, a warrior and a chieftain's son, commenting, during the Chinese rule there was everything. There is nothing now. There was also a falling off in trade. Outside powers. Yaqub came to power after the Chinese were driven out. The Chinese only became important when they returned with an army. The Khan of Kokand had some claim over Bazar Khan as a subject, but did nothing in practice. Russia and England never recognized Yaqub as a legal ruler. Yaqub was careful not to provoke the Russians but was firm in resisting pressure from their side. The British sent agents from India, but the country between Kashgar and British India was too difficult for the British to do much. In 1867 Yaqub rejected a Russian proposal to build a road into his territory. Rionil went to Kashgar with no effect. Yaqub sent a man to Punjab and in response, in 1868, Robert Barclay Shaw went unofficially to Kashgar, the first Englishman to do so. He was soon joined by George W. Hayward. In 1870 Thomas Douglas Forsyth was sent to Kashgar as envoy, found Yaqub campaigning in the east and returned to India. In 1871 Russia occupied Kulja. In 1872 Alexander Kaulbars went from Kulja to Kashgar and signed a trade treaty. But Yaqub Beg was careful that Russian merchants made little profit. Kaulbars left with Haji Tora Saeed Yaqub Khan, the nephew of Yaqub Beg. Haji Tora went to Tashkent, St. Petersburg and Constantinople, through the Suez Canal to India and returned with Forsyth. In 1874, Forsyth went to Kashgar and signed a trade treaty. In 1875 Russia planned to invade Kashgar, but this was interrupted by the events leading to the annexation of Kokand. The death of Yaqub Beg. His manner of death is unclear. The Times of London and the Russian Turkestan Gazette both reported that he had died after a short illness. The contemporaneous historian Musa Sairami, 1836–1917, states that he was poisoned on May 30, 1877 in Kala by the former Hakim, local city ruler, of Yarkand, Niaz Hakim Beg, after the latter concluded a conspiracy agreement with the king. Chinese forces in Jungaria. However, Niaz Beg himself, in a letter to the king authorities, denied his involvement in the death of Yaqub Beg, and claimed that the Kashgarian ruler committed suicide. Some say, probably, without any basis in fact, that he was killed in battle with the Chinese, while contemporaneous Muslim writers usually explained Yaqub Beg's death by poisoning, and the suicide theory was apparently the accepted truth among the king generals of the time. Modern historians, according to Kim Ho-dong, think that natural death, of a stroke, is the most plausible explanation. Contemporaneous Western sources say the Chinese got rid of him by poisoning him as some other sort of subversive act. Westerners also say he was assassinated. The exact date of Yaqub Beg's death is also somewhat uncertain, although Sairami claimed that he died on April 28, 1877. Modern historians think that this is impossible, as Prulsky met him on May 9. The Chinese sources usually give May 22 as the date of his death, while Alexei Kuropatkin thought it to be May 29. Late May 1877 is therefore thought to be the most likely time period. Yaqub Beg and his son Ashana Beg's corpses were burnt to cinders in public. This angered the population in Kashgar, but Chinese troops squashed a rebellious plot by Hakim Khan to rebel. 4 of his sons and 2 grandsons were captured by the Chinese. 1 son was beheaded, 1 grandson died, and the rest were sentenced to be castrated and enslaved to soldiers. Surviving members of Yaqub Beg's family included his 4 sons, 4 grandchildren, 2 grandsons and 2 granddaughters, and 4 wives. They either died in prison in Lamzhou, Gansu, or were killed by the Chinese. His sons Yima Kuli, Kati Kuli, Mighty Kuli, and grandson Aisan the Hun were the only survivors in 1879. They were all underage children, and put on trial, sentenced to an agonizing death if they were complicit in their father's rebellious sedition, or if they were innocent of their father's crimes, were to be sentenced to castration and serving as a eunuch slave to Chinese troops when they reached 11 years old. Although some sources assert that the sentence of castration was carried out, official sources from the U.S. State Department and activists involved in the incident state that Yaqub Beg's son and grandsons had their sentence commuted to life imprisonment with a fund provided for their support. Legacy. After his death, his state of Kashgaria rapidly fell apart, and Kashgar was reconquered by the Qing dynasty and later inherited by the Republic of China. Yaqub Beg makes a notable appearance in the second half of George MacDonald Fraser's novel Flashman. At the charge, one source says that his tomb was at Kashgar but was razed by the Chinese in 1878. The name Yaqub Beg was used for a son of Yulbaz Khan. Rebia Kadir claimed Yaqub Beg was a war hero. Al-Qaeda ideologue Mustafa Set Mariam Nasser praised Yaqub Beg, praising his buildings of educational institutions for Islam and mosques, calling him Atalik Ghazi and a good man for his war against Buddhists and Chinese. The Doğu Turkestan Haber Ajansi, East Turkestan News Agency, published an article from Al-Qaeda branch Al-Nusra Front's English-language Al-Risala magazine. Second issue. Translated from English into Turkish and titled Al-Risale. Turkestan Daglari. 2. Bolam. The Message. Turkestan Mountains, Part 2. Which praised the Sharia implemented by Yaqub Beg and cited him as an upholder of jihad, attacking the king. The Turkestan Islamic Party mentioned Yaqub Beg's war in Issue 1 and Issue 19 of its magazine, Islamic Turkestan, in an article about the history of the region. See also, Xinjiang under King rule. Dungan Revolt. 1862–77. King reconquest of Xinjiang. Notes. Bolger. Demetrius Charles. 1878. The Life of Yaqub Beg. Atalik Ghazi and Badaulet. Amir of Kashgar. London. W. H. Allen. Full text is available on Internet Archive. A recent reprint is available as e.g. ISBN 0-7661-88450. Sources. Kim Ho-dong. 2004. Holy War in China. The Muslim Rebellion and State in Chinese Central Asia. 1864–1877. Stanford. Caliph. Stanford University Press. ISBN 0-8047-48845. Yaqub Beg and Encyclopedia Britannica. Yaqub Beg Invasion. At Kashgar City official website, quite detailed. Although, admittedly, not in very grammatical English. In literature, Yaqub Beg is a secondary character in the novel Flashman at the Charge, published in 1973. Demetrius Charles Bolger. The Life of Yaqub Beg. Atalik Ghazi and Badaulet. Amir of Kashgar. London. W.M. H. Allen & Co. 1878. From the Open Library. A fictionalization of Yaqub Beg's life appears in the novel Tales of Inner Asia by Todd Gibson. Works by or about Yaqub Beg at Internet Archive. Copper coins of the rebels Rashidun and Yaqub Beg. There are Noravank Gospels, dating from 1487. Includes a rare mention of Yaqub Beg.